What if the version of you living your dream life isn't somewhere out in the distance, but already here? What if all this time you weren't chasing a future, but remembering a frequency? This isn't just a poetic idea. It's a truth embedded in the very fabric of reality, in the strange, beautiful science we call quantum entanglement. Right now, at this moment, you are entangled with countless versions of yourself. The version who has already leapt, already healed, already created, already arrived. Those timelines don't live in your imagination. They live in your field. And the field is alive, listening, waiting. Not for your words, but for your signal. Not for what you wish, but for what you are. This is not about hustle or wishing harder or scripting mantras until your hand hurts. This is about something deeper, the collapse of identity that binds you to an outdated frequency. This is about remembering that reality is nothing more than a mirror, and the version of you staring into it is the only one with the power to change it. So in this guide, we won't just talk about manifestation. We'll dismantle the myths that keep you stuck. We'll walk through what it really means to collapse timelines and why your future is already trying to reach you. We'll bring the strange science of entanglement down from the stars and into your skin. If you've ever felt the whisper that you were meant for more, if you've ever caught a glimpse of yourself in a fleeting dream and thought, "That's me," then you're already on the threshold. You're already leaking into the next timeline. Let's step through the versions of you. There is not just one you. This is the first truth you must accept, and it may feel unsettling at first. We've been taught to believe in a single identity, a singular self traveling through linear time, one birth, one path, one destination. But that is an illusion. You are a field, not a point. You are a symphony of possibilities, not a single note. In the quantum world, a particle doesn't exist in just one place until it is observed. It exists in all possible places simultaneously. And you are no different. You are already connected to all the possibilities of your being. The only question is which one you are currently collapsing into reality. The version of you that has everything you desire already exists. It is not waiting for you to build it. It is waiting for you to notice it, to choose it, to become coherent with it. Right now, you are entangled with it. Not tomorrow, not after you heal. Now. But why don't you feel it? Why does it seem so far away? Because you have been broadcasting the signal of a version of you that doubts, that delays, that fears, and the field reflects accordingly. The field responds to being, not begging. Most people approach change backward. They try to do more, think more, push harder, believing they can force reality to shift from the outside. They hustle, struggle, recite affirmations with clenched jaws, and when nothing happens, they think they must not be trying hard enough. Even when they discover spirituality, they make the same mistake in a softer disguise. Endless visualizations, endless vision boards, endless rituals. But nothing changes. Why? Because the field doesn't respond to want. It doesn't respond to desperate words. It doesn't even respond to vivid imagination alone. It responds to frequency. And frequency isn't shaped by what you think about for 5 minutes a day. It's shaped by what you embody, moment to moment. You are always broadcasting, not with your thoughts, but with your being. Not with your words, but with your coherence. The question is simple. What version of you is doing the observing? What version of you is collapsing the timeline? Entanglement is not a metaphor, it's you. In physics, quantum entanglement is the phenomenon where two particles, once connected, remain linked no matter how far apart they are. Change one, and the other responds instantaneously, even if they're on opposite sides of the universe. Einstein called it spooky action at a distance. But it's not spooky. It's the way reality works. And you are not an exception. You are not a lonely particle in an indifferent void. You are a living field of consciousness entangled with infinite potentials. You are already connected to the version of you that chose differently, loved bravely, leapt instead of hesitated, spoke instead of silenced themselves. But here's the problem. Most people remain entangled with the version of themselves that is still surviving, still doubting, still clutching, still afraid. Not because they consciously choose to, but because they have been trained to. Through repetition, through inherited trauma, through identity loops so deep they forget to question them. And what you remain entangled with, you reinforce. You broadcast, you collapse into form. Why nothing seems to work. This is why so many people say, "I've tried to manifest, but nothing works." It's not that they're lazy. It's not that they don't deserve it. It's not even that they're thinking wrong. It's that the signal, the deep, unconscious vibration they're sending, is still coming from the version of themselves that doesn't believe, that doesn't feel worthy, that doesn't act as though the new reality is already here. The quantum field is neutral, doesn't care about your words or your vision boards or your desperate prayers. It listens to what you are consistently being. Not who you wish to be, not who you say you are, but who you are being right now, in your choices, in your energy, in your very breath. And this is where most people quit. Because the moment they try to jump, the old timeline starts screaming. The old identity whispers, "You can't. You're not ready." Who do you think you are? And so they collapse back into the familiar self. Not because it's better, but because it's familiar. The glimpses are already happening. If you've ever felt, even for a moment, that strange pull, that sudden certainty that you're meant for more, that fleeting flash of yourself living another life, that feeling that reality just glitched, that was not your imagination. That was your future self bleeding through. Time is not linear. It is layered. Your future self can reach backward just as easily as you can reach forward. You are in a feedback loop with the version of you who already made it, right now. They are pulling you forward as much as you are reaching for them. You don't have to invent them. You simply have to stop ignoring them. The shift begins with identity collapse. So what do we do? How do we break free of the old entanglement? How do we stop looping and start jumping? The answer is not visualization. It's not wishing harder. It's not begging the universe. It's something much more powerful and much more uncomfortable. identity collapse. Because the self you are clinging to cannot carry your future. It cannot walk into the timeline you're calling. Jumping is not about becoming someone new. It's about letting the old self die. The quiet, sacred death of the observer who has kept you small. This is where most people hesitate. They say they want change, but they're unwilling to grieve the familiar pain. They say they want to leap, but they're still entangled with the version of them that clings to struggle because at least it's predictable. But here's the secret. The field doesn't need your effort. It doesn't need your hustle. It needs your coherence. You can't trick it with words. You can't fake it with rituals. You can only meet it as what you already are, or collapse back into what you've always been. Closing, Part 1, The Threshold. So here we are, at the threshold. You don't need to wait for tomorrow. You don't need to wait until you're healed or perfect or ready. The field is alive now. The connection is active now. The observer is choosing now. So who is behind your eyes? Is it the version of you who doubts, or the one who remembers? Because you are not here to chase your dream life. You are here to embody the version of you who is already living it, and to watch as the field responds. Not because it's rewarding you, but because it has no choice. That's the rule of reality. The observer collapses the timeline, and the timeline obeys the observer. The illusion of action. Before we dive into the method, let me dismantle another illusion. You cannot jump to a new timeline through effort alone. Action does matter, but only when it emerges from the right observer. If you take massive action while remaining entangled with the self who doubts, fears, and clings, then all you're doing is dragging that old frequency into every step you take. That's why people work themselves to exhaustion, visualize for hours, journal until their hands ache, and nothing changes. Because they never stopped identifying as the observer who doesn't believe it's possible. This is the first truth you must hold on to. Jumping doesn't happen through doing. Jumping happens through collapsing. What is identity collapse? Identity collapse is not poetic metaphor. It's the act of letting the outdated observer die. Every moment you exist, you are observing reality from a particular identity, a set of assumptions about who you are and what is possible for you. That observer is not neutral. It shapes the field. But here's what most people miss. The field can't update while you keep collapsing reality from the same observer. So the question isn't, how do I become the future me? The question is, am I willing to stop being the version of me who can never hold that future? Most aren't. Why? Because even misery can feel like home when you've decorated it with enough reasons to stay. The old self is familiar. It's the mask you've worn for years. And masks, even painful ones, are hard to remove. The three-part method. Here is the method to collapse the old self and step into the timeline that is already waiting. It is simple, but it is not easy. Part 1. Witness. You cannot release what you refuse to see. You cannot collapse what you deny exists. So first, sit in absolute presence with a version of you that is keeping you small. Don't judge them. Don't rush them. See them fully. Ask, what does this self believe? What does this self fear? What stories does this self tell to justify staying here? What assumptions does this self make about reality? How does this self speak to me when no one is listening? Pay attention to your body. The old observer often leaves imprints in the body, a heaviness in the chest, a tightness in the throat, a sinking feeling in the stomach. That's not random. That's the signal of your current frequency. Feel it. Acknowledge it. And when you feel ready, whisper to yourself, I see you. I thank you. But you are not me anymore. Part 2. Sever. This is the most uncomfortable step and the most powerful. You must declare, this is no longer who I am. I release this version. I collapse this observer. Say it aloud if you can. Write it down if you must. But mean it. You will feel resistance here. The old self will fight for its life. It will scream, cry, bargain. It will tell you you're making a mistake, that you're unsafe without it. That's normal. That's the death throes of an identity that has nothing left to stand on but habit. Let it scream and keep severing. Because here's the secret. The old self has no real power except the power you give it. You don't kill it by force. You let it dissolve by refusing to collapse reality through its lens. Part 3. Choose. Once the field is clear, you must choose. But not in thought alone. In being. Don't just imagine the future version of you. Become them now. Stand like them. Breathe like them. Decide like them. People often ask, what would the version of me who has everything do? That's a good start. But the better question is, what does that version of me no longer tolerate? And then stop tolerating it, now. Every choice, no matter how small, is a reinforcement of a frequency. When you choose as your future self, the field has no choice but to reflect it back. Anchoring the new observer. Once you've collapsed the old identity and stepped into the new, you'll feel it. There's a lightness, a clarity, almost like walking through a door and realizing you'd been asleep before. But here's the part that nobody tells you. The old timeline doesn't just disappear overnight. You've been tuned to it for years, maybe decades. The nervous system remembers. The habits remember. The people around you remember. So when you step into a new frequency, there will be noise, echoes of the old timeline trying to pull you back. This is not failure. This is the field recalibrating. Imagine a radio that's been on the same station for years. When you turn the dial, there's static at first, sometimes even moments of silence, before the new signal comes through loud and clear. The same happens in your life. Old thoughts may resurface. Old emotions may spike. Old situations may try to reassert themselves. Don't panic. Don't collapse back. Breathe and choose again. Each time you choose the new observer, in thought, in feeling, in action, you stabilize the field. Staying inside the new timeline. Here's the mistake most people make. They think the leap is enough. They think the hard part is jumping, but the real work is staying. Jumping isn't something you do once and forget about. It's something you become. You don't force the new timeline into existence. You anchor yourself into it through consistency. Consistency isn't about perfection. It's about returning again and again, to the new observer whenever the old one tries to take the wheel. It sounds subtle, but it's everything. When the bank account still shows scarcity, and you respond with abundance. When the relationship still feels stuck, and you speak from wholeness. When fear knocks, and you answer as your highest self, not your oldest one. That is how you stabilize the jump. The field doesn't test you. It reflects you. One of the most damaging beliefs in spiritual circles is that the universe is testing me. Number. The universe doesn't test. The universe listens. Every subtle vibration you emit tells the field who you believe yourself to be, and the field obeys. So if you've jumped but still see the old reality echoing back, don't ask, why hasn't it happened yet? Ask, what version of me am I reinforcing right now? That question is your compass. The quiet power of repetition. You will wobble, you will forget. You will sometimes slip back into old patterns. That's okay. Each time you remember and choose again, you weaken the old frequency. Over time, not in years, but in cycles. The old self loses its hold. What once felt like trying becomes natural. What once felt like pretending becomes obvious. You're not faking it until you make it. You're feeling it until you stabilize it. And at some point, without even noticing, you'll look around and then realize the field has changed. Not because you forced it, but because you became unshakable in who you are. One small choice. Before we move to the final part, let me leave you with this. What's one choice you can make today that only the version of you in the new timeline would make? Not a big leap. Just one coherent action, one shift, one refusal to tolerate what no longer aligns, one silent declaration. I am already here. That's how the jump becomes real. Not in fireworks, but in frequency. After the jump, recalibration. You've done it. You collapsed the old self. You severed the entanglement with the version of you who doubted, delayed, and sabotaged. You chose and became the observer aligned with your highest timeline. And then, life didn't instantly look like a movie ending. That's where most people get confused. You see, jumping isn't the finish line. It's the beginning of recalibration. When you first step into a new timeline, you don't yet know how to live inside it. Your nervous system still remembers the old frequency. The people and situations in your life may still be tuned to your past self. Your mind may even try to convince you nothing happened at all. This is normal. It's not failure. It's physics. When a radio changes frequencies, static comes first. When a system installs a new operating identity, it needs time to stabilize. You are reprogramming not just your thoughts, but your entire field. And the field has no choice but to respond. But while it catches up, you must hold the line. You must anchor. Anchoring without pretending. Anchoring doesn't mean pretending everything is fine when it's not. It doesn't mean pasting a smile over your fear. It means choosing to respond from the new identity, even when nothing outside has caught up yet. It means when your bank account still shows scarcity, you respond with the energy of abundance. When your relationships still feel tangled, you speak from wholeness. When fear whispers in the dark, you answer from your highest self, not the ghost of who you used to be. Each time you choose the new observer, the field listens. Each time you act from the future instead of the past, you reinforce the frequency. And eventually, the static quiets, and the new station comes through loud and clear. When the old timeline fights back, here's the part nobody likes to talk about. The old timeline doesn't let go without a fight. Not because it's punishing you, not because you failed, but because it's what's familiar. You've spent years, maybe decades, reinforcing the old signal. It won't vanish overnight. So don't be surprised if old habits resurface, old thoughts sneak in, old situations pop up, trying to lure you back. This isn't proof that you're broken. This isn't proof that the jump didn't work. It's just the echo of the old frequency fading out. Let it fade. Don't collapse back into it. Breathe and choose again. Because every time you refuse to re-identify with the outdated observer, the old timeline weakens. Its grip loosens. Its power dissolves. And each time you stabilize the new frequency, you're not just living a new life. You're becoming a new signal the field can't ignore. Living from signal, not control. Many people think they need to control reality. They try to manipulate every detail. They treat the field like a vending machine. If I push the right buttons, I'll get what I want. But the field doesn't work like that. It doesn't reward effort. It reflects coherence. You're not here to control the field. You're here to transmit a signal so clear, so consistent, so unshakable, that reality has no choice but to match it. You don't have to force outcomes. You don't have to micromanage synchronicities. You simply become impossible to ignore. When your signal is stable, reality bends. Integration. When the new you feels normal. At first, the new identity feels like a mask. You're still tempted to act like the future self, to play the part. But something subtle happens over time. The more you return to the new observer, the less it feels like pretending. The more you anchor it in your breath, in your choices, in your presence, the more it becomes who you actually are. Until one day, without realizing it, you stop trying. You stop doubting. You stop questioning whether you're doing it right. You wake up one morning, look around, and realize it already happened. You're not playing a role anymore. You're living a life that matches who you've become, not because you forced it, not because you tricked the universe, but because you finally stopped broadcasting the signal of someone who could never hold it. This is integration, when the field no longer questions who you are, because you no longer question it either. The observer is everything. In quantum mechanics, the observer is the one who collapses the wave of possibility into a single outcome. But here's the piece most forget. It's not just the act of observing. It's which version of you is doing the observing. If the observer behind your eyes is the version of you entangled with lack, fear, and limitation, then that's the timeline you collapse. But if the observer is the version who remembers, who trusts, who knows, then reality has no choice but to reflect it. You're not trapped by circumstances. You're only trapped by the observer you keep choosing to be. So at any moment, you can change. A way of being. This isn't a technique to be performed once. It's not a ritual you do when you feel inspired. It's not a script you memorize to trick yourself. It's a way of being, a way of walking, breathing, deciding, moving, as the version of you who already arrived. It's choosing coherence over chaos. Again, and again, and again. It's quiet at first. It's subtle. But over time, it becomes effortless, obvious, natural. Because when the new observer stops feeling like a performance, that's when you know you've fully integrated. Questions to guide you. Whenever you feel yourself wobbling, whenever the old timeline whispers to you, ask yourself these simple questions. Who is behind my eyes right now? Is it the observer who doubts or the one who remembers? What choice would only the future version of me make? What does that version of me no longer tolerate? What would it feel like to respond from that frequency right now? These questions realign your signal. They collapse the noise. They bring you back to coherence. You're already entangled. Here's the truth most people forget. You didn't jump into some distant, unreachable future. You collapsed the illusion of separation between you and the version of you who was always waiting. That life was never out there. That self was never unreachable. The entanglement was always active. You just stopped ignoring it. Now all that remains is to live as if it's normal. Because when it feels normal, it becomes real. What happens next? You live it. You walk, you wake, you feel. And each time life hands you contrast, as it inevitably will, you ask, which version of me is being invited right now? Not out of fear, not out of control, but out of clarity. Because you are not here to control life. You are here to broadcast a signal so pure and aligned that life cannot help but organize itself around it. The field doesn't test you. It listens to you. And every choice you make whispers, this is who I am now. The final breath. Take a breath, not just for your lungs, but for your timeline. Feel what's different in your body, not what you hope to feel, but what is already true. That's your signal. That's your anchor. That's your proof. You don't need to chase it anymore. You don't need to beg for it anymore. You simply need to stop feeding the observer who was never capable of holding it. And when you do, the field updates itself. Not because it's rewarding you, not because you passed a test, but because it was always listening. Closing, you are already here. If this message found you at the right moment, it's not because you learned something new. It's because you remembered something ancient. You didn't become someone else. You became who